we decided to start this one Joe Rogan style. So I don't know exactly when this started, but here with Easton, we've done a lot of these together. And I was thinking today we could talk, some sales stuff, whatever you want to. But I also think it'd be cool, like looking back, you've been doing insurance. We've been working together for like 5 years,
almost 5. Yeah.
Almost 5 years now. It's been crazy. There's been ups, downs. I feel like we learned a lot, made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. And it's been cool. But I was thinking about this morning when like I walked in and was like, showed you a picture of Scarlett and Lindsay's pregnant now. We're both married. It's a very different place than we were at 5 years ago. When we're both, neither ones were married. I was definitely convinced I was never gonna have kids. I think I told you that. I think I told everyone that. And then I was the first one to have kids. And then it's like my favorite thing of all time now. So I'm super happy for you and Lindsay. But I'd like to, like, you can start there, like, kind of like how life has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, what's different now and kind of how that affects the business side now that I'm not 23 anymore, you're not 25 anymore. We have some real responsibilities now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool to think about the evolution of what's important.
Yeah.
Because I think when you first get started in the business, like you're hyper focused on financial stability, obviously. Like most people come here to have the goal of being as financially free as you can be, and I think you're a good example. If you get to a certain point where some of that priority starts to change to like, hey, I want to have a very, very successful business that gives me the freedom, but it's not necessarily about like, you've done a good job. It's not really the stuff, how much stuff can you have? And it's more of, this gives me time to spend with my family, which was always important. Mm-hmm. But like now, especially because Deb is so busy working and you're so busy working and you guys are raising Scarlett. So it kind of gives you that extra time where like, hey, now when we have time, that's really what we enjoy the most.
Yeah.
It's like, I like having, I've got two, it used to be like, hey, if I could have one night a month to spend with Lindsay is where it started. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I basically have to work every day. And then one night, we're gonna have one date night. And then that, slowly over time becomes 2. And then, can you get to having like 2 nights where just like, hey, after 6 or 7, with the exception of, some inbound calls, maybe like we're going to be not just spending time together, but like present.
Yeah.
That's been a huge focus for us, especially this last like 18 months, especially finding out that she's pregnant now. I was like, I want to be able to be home with her, with the little one. So like, what do we have to get done so that, when April shows up, I cannot just be home, but I can be home and like present with everything that's happening in my family. Yeah,
that's what I realized. So when we first had Scarlett, well, to backtrack, like you said, hanging out with family has always been important. It wasn't always like that important to me, honestly. Like, I know it's kind of messed up to say, but I just like I'd put it to the side. I think there's phases in business too, where it's like, if you're fighting for your life, like you have to give up some stuff. Deb's always been a priority to me, but I could say the rest of my family probably always hasn't been. And I've made a more conscious effort to build a good relationship with my family recently, which has been cool for me. We never had a bad relationship, but I would go like a month without talking to my parents, which is not cool. And I have great parents. They're super supportive. Like even Lindsay was like, your mom texts me all the time. Like I have the best parents ever. I just like could get laser focused on something and not pay attention. But about being present, like I noticed like kids pick up stuff fast, and like I would be on my phone sometimes, like hanging out with Scarlett, and then like she would want to like grab it and like play with it, and they like they pick up stuff that you're doing so fast, and they want to replicate it. And so like I've made a really conscious effort when I'm hanging out with her, which just like if Deb's working, it's just me and her. Like I'll try to put it down for a while and like be completely off it, set it to the side, and I'm like the business is in a place now where the world's not going to burn down if I don't answer a call, and I still get back to people pretty quickly, but like maybe once she's like eating or doing something, I won't be on it all the time. I let things kind of come as they come. Right. And I think, but I think that's something you have to get to, right. And have to figure out when that makes sense in your life. And to your point, like, I think the things that are more important are like to have like a nice house to live in, like our cars are paid off. That's important to me. I don't have to worry about like extra bills. And like, kind of like when we built our business, I was always like, hey, like if my biggest leg, like if you quit tomorrow, like how screwed would we be? And like there was times where it'd be like really screwed, and the goal was always to build a business where it would keep running without your biggest few people in it. And like I look at life that way now, I'm like, okay, like if I couldn't work for like how much do I have saved up where I could like live my lifestyle now if I couldn't work for like 5 years, 10 years, like how long could I go? And like, that's what's important to me now. Like, do we have, childcare to help out? Do we have a nanny? Do I have, a good place to live in, good school? Like that kind of stuff has gotten more important.
Well, yeah. And the sacrifice thing that you had mentioned early, when I first had started and I was kind of like watching you, like I had no idea like what your overall situation was. This just that you had done really well and that you were kind of like a big up and coming, like you were selling a bunch and your team was expanding, and like there was a lot of spotlight on you early, and which could be, a lot for somebody that's a little bit younger to handle sometimes, and you just were kind of like no big deal about it. And you're like, well, dude, this is what my schedule's been. This is where I've had to travel to. This is the time that I took away from home. And so I just tried to like mirror image, okay, if he was willing to give this up, and then like 18 months later, like this is the strides that he was able to make. Imagine if we could do that for like, dude, 3 straight years where you just like give up. I mean, do we miss weddings?
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of our friends, not getting to talk to our family as much, not getting to spend as much time with our now wives. So that sacrifice piece, which people talk about a lot, and it sounds maybe cool to say sometimes, but in 2021, dude, I was gone 300 days of the year, and I would bet in that timeline, 20 to 21 and 22, like you were pretty similar.
Yeah.
So like, hey, what the spot that you're in now is only because you were like, hey, I have to make some sacrifices, but then you executed on the sacrifices, which is why you get to, I mean, you're not necessarily stuff, but dude, you have a home, you're like pretty debt free, and you get to spend time with your kid.
Right.
And like with Deb.
Yeah.
So the sacrifice piece is really important, and maybe I know everybody kind of talks about it, but I think the concept versus the action is so much different.
Yeah.
Like to actually give up that time and be gone and take the financial risks of investing in yourself and your business. Like that stuff is all really scary, and it can definitely suck, but it's not going to suck forever. Just, hey, if I can just consistently, if I have to miss some stuff over this, I think you can really, in 2 years, especially in this business, dude, you can make such enormous strides in 24 months. So I think farther than in any other startup business, like if you actually look at this as an insurance business versus a franchise of some kind, where you're not yanking out a $500,000 loan that you're hoping to go neutral on in 7 years so that you can be profitable. Like in 2 years, if you can just give up, whether it's bad habits, dumb hobbies, have a little focus and discipline for a few years, be willing to invest in yourself, your business, your staff, the buildings, all the stuff that we've kind of done. It obviously can pay off like really big, dude.
Yeah, and I think I people all the time listening to like podcasts and like gurus talk about stuff. They're always like, there usually is either like someone who's like, you want to grind like forever and like work all the time, or it's like people are like, you want to work really smart and leverage time and like only work smart. And I think the answer is like it's both, and it depends on where you're at in business, but it's always kind of both. Like if you just work hard, that's good, but it's not going to get you where you need to get to. And especially like we've talked about this before. If you're in a commission-based sales business, like it's easy to work a lot. You could work 80 hours a week and get nothing done. And I've had days, even, there's still some days where I'm like, I was doing stuff all day, but I didn't get anything done, right? And then there's times where you can be really intentional for a few hours and you're like, wow, what a productive day, right? And so I think there's a fine line where it's like, work really hard, but you also have to course correct and take time to like look at everything and take a step back and try to have a 10,000 foot view of your business. Like that's one thing I started doing probably a couple years ago, was going like, okay, like on Sundays I would try to, relax, get some time by myself and just think like, okay, this is where the business is at, where can I improve? What went well this week? What didn't go well? And early in my career, like I did never stop to breathe or look at things or think about it. It was just always like go, 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 go. And even, Calvin sent me a picture. I'm going to pull up my phone real quick, actually. And he sent me a picture and was like, from a couple years ago, I was super fat. Like I probably weighed like 250 pounds at the time, right? I don't know if you can see this, Sammy. Like, I was definitely like, I was bigger, but like at that time in my life, like we were super, I mean, this is probably not a great picture to show because we were also at like a nightclub. This is a totally different time of my life. But like at that time, like I was focused on just killing it, selling, building, like working all the time. And it's like, would I go to the gym every day? Yeah, but it'd be like 30 minutes and I would probably hit some curls and call it a day, and like say, yep, I went to the gym. But I knew like there's times where you have to sacrifice certain things. And if you have enough time, then you can always you can always handle that stuff later, you know? And I'm not saying everyone should do that, but that was just, at that time, I'm like, I don't have enough time to spend a couple hours a day working out. You know, I'm up early, I'm working legit 80 hours a week, and you did the same thing, right? And then now you have, you know, with some of the improvements we've made, because dude, when we started doing insurance, like this was a startup for sure. Like stuff was breaking all the time. You know, the leads would be a disaster getting delivered. Like it was really a startup. But now, you know, you can sell virtually, and you know, you have like a really good, you know, fitness and health routine now, I think. And that's an option for people that come on. They don't have to work like that. But I think it'd be cool if you want to talk about kind of what, you know, what you do to be healthy and to, you know, incorporate that side of life into business now, because I think it's important. And we didn't do that early on. Maybe we might have had to miss it because we didn't have all the things we have now, as far as like, you know, proficiency with lead and being able to do virtual sales. Like we were traveling all the time. We only had certain lead types. We had to work a lot more hours to get the same result, I think. But I think if you can go over like kind of what your schedule looks like and how you can fit everything in and still be productive, I think that'd be cool to talk about.
Yeah. And everyone runs it. Like some people are nighttime people. So if that, you know, if that's you, all good. I don't really like to stay up late, dude. I would much rather get up in the morning. And I remember, it's funny, Calvin was like getting pissed the other day. I was giving him a hard time. He's like, dude, you guys totally duped me into thinking that everyone in the entire company gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's not true. He's like, I definitely stopped doing that, and I'm sleeping until 5 no matter what, sometimes 5:30. And he was like, I'm happy that works for you guys, but I'm not doing that anymore, and I don't feel like the whole company does that. And I was like, well, no, obviously the whole company's not doing that, dude. We just told you that to see if you would do it. But I like the mornings. You know, I've always, like, I come from a morning family. Like, I've got my dad's entire side of the family has a ranching background. And then, dude, my mom was literally raising 3 kids while my dad was working. So it's not like she just had a perfect sleep routine and, like, had full control of her sleep schedule. Mm-hmm. So, like, our family just kind of gets up at, like, you know, 4:30 all the time. So for me I started setting an alarm at 3:58 as my, like, personal vendetta against the 4 o'clock club kids that were like, hey, if you're not part of the 4 a.m. grind, like, you know, you suck. Yeah. So I was like, oh, it sucks you guys are sleeping in so late. I'm up at 3:58. And it was like my little 2-minute vendetta, you know, to try to like mentally get ahead. And then this year I shifted just to kind of experiment to see what my body could handle. And so I started getting up at 3:30 and getting in like an ice tub, you know, that's like 44 degrees at 3:45 in the morning, just to like see if I can do it and how long I can sustain that for. Mm-hmm. It's a great like shell shock to wake up, kind of gives you a little adrenaline pump. And it's definitely like, there's nothing worse for me than having to get up and just freeze. Yeah. Like I hate it. And so it's like one small thing, like my day cannot possibly get worse. Like this is horrible. So like, oh, you already get through something, you know, horrid right out of the gate, and it kind of gives you a lot of confidence. Yeah. And then I just go straight to the gym. You know, I usually do anywhere from like 90 minutes to like 2 hours, but I do all my stuff first thing in the morning and I'm done. Mm-hmm. So if I can get to the gym by 4:30, I can work out for 2 hours, be done at 6:30, home at like 6:50, and then I have like all that prep time to like get my office set up, leads ready to roll, you know, if I have new agent calls, whatever it is. So all of that stuff's taken care of in the morning, and then I can just literally start working at 7. Yeah. Instead of like getting up at 6, coffee, breakfast, feeling a little groggy, start working at 7:30, which is what we did. I mean, we were up early for a long time, but we definitely cut out the exercise. Yeah. It would be, we would hit the gym, but it would not be like a efficient workout. And that's like, everyone's schedule is different, right? Like what I typically do now is I wake up at 5, I get some work done for like an hour, and it depends on Deb's schedule. Like if I need to be there, you know, with the monitor, if she's there, you know, with the baby, things change. But I wake up at 5, and I'm usually really, sharp in the morning, and I have some time to get stuff done. So I do work for like an hour in the morning, and then at 6 I'll go and do whatever workout I'm going to do. I have the same thing. I have a cold plunge. It's outside, which I live in Texas now, which is way better. It's like 60 degrees. So it's not nearly as bad, but I go do that in the morning. I like it. It's a good way to wake up. I saw one of our friends on Facebook post something. It was like, all these, which I actually thought was funny. He was like, all these guys posting cold plunge pictures. I've never had to go feed the horses at when it's 10 degrees out at 2 a.m. I'm like, that's funny. But that's basically like what you grew up doing. So that's probably why you like it. But yeah, dude, I like the mornings, and I got really bitter about the cold, which I had to like force myself. I don't like cold weather. Yeah. Like I was excited to come to Colorado because it's less snowy and definitely less cold than Montana is in the winters. And I found myself kind of going like, dude, every time it snows, like I get pissed. Like I'm getting visibly frustrated about something that's uncontrollable. Yeah. And I was like, what an immature thing to get mad at. So now when it snows and it's like freezing out, I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Yeah. And like head faking myself into enjoying that we have a 4-season state. Yeah. You know, instead of complaining because I don't feel like that was helping.
Right. And one thing I was going to say about like the exercise and like finding some hobby, it doesn't, if you don't like to exercise, like I think it's still good to get out in nature, walk around, but like if you really like reading or, you know, doing whatever. But I think it's when you're in business, it's really good for me anyways, for my brain, it's like really good to be able to be focused on something else sometimes. And then when I'm focused on something else and then get back to work, I'm more clear. Right. And I remember early, like sometimes we would just go like, let's work 12-hour days and take no breaks. And I think that can work, but I think you can also be more productive in like 11 hours. You take one of those hours to like unwind a little bit, take a minute to go on a coffee break or BS with people. And then you can be more productive when you're actually working, And I remember early, we were always like, very anti like personal development, right? Like, oh, like those are just for people who, they're just trying to scam you, whatever. And then, as I realized, like once you get to a certain level in business, you keep finding mentors that can help you. And it's like I moved to Vegas to get around Andrew, to be around a mentor that could help me in business, which was crazy. When I look back at it, I'm like, that was a crazy thing to do, to move me and Deb to a different state to find someone that would help me. But it was worth it in business, But at some point, like, you can learn a lot from finding good mentors, and then also, books and podcasts and things like that you can apply to your business, So I don't know what you do for reading, but I don't read. I listen to audiobooks like crazy. I take notes on them is what I do. Cause I don't like to read. I like doing stuff. So I don't have the attention span to sit down and read, but I'll be on a run. And if I hear something good in the audiobook I'm reading, I'll like stop and write it down in my notes or whatever. But what do you do from a personal development standpoint? Cause I think it's important to, before you go, but to do personal development, but to not only do it. Because if you're only doing it and just getting information and not using the information, then it's useless, right?
Dude, a weird tip that I guess I kind of gathered from Alex Hermosi. He was talking about like people have a goal of like, dude, I want to read 30, 40, or 50 books this year and apply nothing. So, which, I was like, hey, I want to read, 2 books a month on either, business related or sales related, or like have an enjoyment book that I got to throw in there. I can't do like all business and all development books all the time. So I like to shake it up from here's a Jack Carr book on something violent that's enjoyable for me to listen to. And then I'll go back to listening to some kind of like business related or book that'll help me learn stuff. So I kind of found a book that Sean recommended to me, actually, How to Win Friends and Influence Other People.
Yeah.
And I kind of took Alex's approach to learning that, where like, dude, I'm going to go through that book. Like, this is my 4th time through it. And until I like make all the changes that I can make from the information in that just one single piece, one single book, like I don't need to pick up a million other books to try to learn stuff from when I'm not even executing like the things that I can still work on improving in one source.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of finding like 3 or 4 books that are relatable to me, that I enjoy, that I think I can implement in our business or in my personal life, and I'm trying to take as much info and like actually put that in action with what I'm doing every day.
Yeah.
Instead of overwhelming my brain with info and then applying nothing for 12 months, and then you're like, nothing happened, and I read all this stuff that I didn't apply.
Yeah, that's what I try to do too with all the books I read. I read like all nonfiction, but different like types of it, and a lot of my favorite ones are like, I like books about stoicism. Because one time the guy Sean called me stoic. I didn't know what it meant, and I was like, is that a compliment or an insult? And then I don't think it was meant as a compliment, honestly, but I looked it up and I was like, oh, I actually do kind of like that like line of thinking, like it's kind of cool. So I made it into a compliment for me, even if it wasn't initially meant as one. But I like books like that. And I remember one I read a couple years ago. It's called The Obstacle is the Way, and it was about the whole premise of it is really like, every time something happens, you can either look at it like, oh, this thing happened to me, or I can use this to learn something and develop a new skill set every time something happens. And that really helped like my mindset in business, where it's like, oh, okay, like either something went well because of something I had learned and put into place, or something, some stuff hit the fan because I don't know how to handle the situation yet. And if I think about it and pay attention to what's going on, then I can make sure this doesn't happen again. Or if it does happen again, I know how to handle it, And so like, yeah, anyone who's like in business, I think should read that book, because it allows you to frame and like logic your way through crap that happens. And, you're like, oh, like say you're in a, sales organization, like you lose a big sale. A lot of people will go, oh, the client or this or that. Right. Or you could go like, okay, like what happened to why I lost this one? Is it something I can control? Is it something that just happened? And usually you can always control pretty much about everything, right? Unless it was something really weird. Or you have an agent quit your team. Like, what could I have done differently here? And it allows you to not be like emotional when stuff happens, but look at it like, oh, like this is just like you said, Alex Hormozy, to tie to this, he said something. He was like, if you were going to create someone who'd be like the best entrepreneur or business person of all time, like how much bad stuff would you put that person through? And like how many challenging situations would you put them through? Like if you created someone in a lab and you're like, I want you to be really good, like what's all the crap you would put them through? And you'd probably put them in the most challenging situations and have the most bad stuff happen to them, right? So like if you think of it that way, you're like, oh, like that's what you would do because there's no emotion tied to it. But when it happens to you, you're like, this sucks. And it does suck, but you have to go like, okay, what can I learn from this, right?
Yeah, the cool part about being in any sales or like building type organization, dude, there's so much stuff to learn.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you've gone through it too, where you're like, you feel like you're about to grasp how it works. And you're like, dude, I figured it out. Yeah. And then like 60 days goes by and you're like, well, I've not had this before. And now I don't know how to fix it, which is the sick part about what we do is like, do we have a direct line of communication with everyone that's like been through it, fixed it, doing well. So like if I called you and you were like, hey, I haven't been through that before. It's literally like when I was brand new, dude, where you like ran out of things that you could help me with. Because I was so atrocious that you're just like, hey, I'm going to put you in touch with someone who's like been around a little longer.
Knows what they're doing.
That's had to deal with more views, you know? So like, here's John's number. I'm going to connect you guys and he can help you. So that's a huge plus. If you're, dude, the culture in the organization is so sick because I would say like 99.9% of everyone is so down to help everyone within the company. You know, there's none of this like weird stuff. Dude, Andrew Taylor has helped me and Mark Mead has helped me so much without getting anything back out of it. You know, maybe besides my personal endorsement, which means literally nothing.
Yeah.
So, but outside of that, you know, they get zero benefit from helping.
Right.
And even if, you know, even initially before we were working like directly together, dude, like you were just like, hey, I'm going to get an office. Like you just holler whenever you need. Like we're all on the same team. So however I can help you, like just call. And as long as I was showing up, like you were in, you know, kind of like regardless. So spending time to create relationships that you can like leverage, not in a bad way, but like, hey, I've got a good relationship with you, dude. If I need help with something, it's never weird for me to like call and say, hey, I bumped into this. Like, do you have an angle?
No, dude, like here's a good example of that. Like when I was trying to get Andrew to help me with building a business, like I was like, what can I offer him to make him want to help me? Right. Like I was trying to get help. So I was like, I'd go into his office. I'd be there early when I moved there. There'd be people there. Like I would take time teaching them how to sell. And like, you know, if people had questions, like I'd be there helping them. And like, I was hoping they'd be like, hey, Zach's teaching me how to sell. And then he'd be like, oh, that guy's not too bad. Maybe I'll help him too, right? And it's like, I wanted to help them, but I also wanted to get help, right? And I think people look at some of that stuff like, oh, you're not doing that in the purest of intentions. I'm like, maybe I wasn't, but I was still helping these people sell so that I could get access to, you know, information, right? And that's how the world works. Where you can, if you provide value, then someone else will provide value to you, you know?
Can't be a pure take relationship.
Yeah, it can't be. No, like I didn't expect him to help me unless I was providing value to him and his team somehow, you know? And that's like what a lot of people are like, hey, if I can ever do anything to help, you know, let me know. It's like, well, if I had to freaking think about what you need to do to help, like that doesn't help me. Like I need you, like that's me doing more work. That's not helpful, you know? The other thing I wanted to ask you about, because we could probably go for days on this, but one thing in business that I've noticed is it's like, there's always, and I have trouble with this, and like you try the best you can to figure it out, but there's always things changing and evolving in any industry that you're in, and there's always people who have like new ideas, and sometimes it's hard because sometimes you should do them, and sometimes you should not do them, and if you change stuff too much, then you're screwed. But if you don't change, then you become a dinosaur and you get smoked, right? Like in our industry right now in insurance, like dude, there are some people running like direct mail leads that are doing fine, but like largely that's a pretty antiquated way to run business, right? Like it's a lead source that, you know, so say you're running like direct mail mortgage protection, whether it's like a call-in lead or a mailer, like that's going to age out. Like people our age, I don't check the mail at all. Like I think Deb checks it like once a month and we throw everything away, you know? And we get solicitations for stuff, and I'm like, I know what that is. That's trash. Throw it away. We send those to people. Like, throw that away, please. and it's targeting, you know, like mortgage protection is targeting, I don't know what percent of people in the country get a mortgage, but I'm sure it's a really small percent. And then the people that send the mailers back in, or call back in, that's 2% of the tiny percent of people that actually get mortgages, right? Mm-hmm. And so like the shift was, okay, like let's start figuring out their lead types and stuff like that. But for you, like, because we've both been on the side where we didn't change fast enough, but you don't want to change all the time. Like, how do you kind of think through stuff like that when you should make a change in business or when you should keep doing what you're doing that's working?
That's like the hardest, you know, quote unquote balance to find, I think, because, you know, having the new idea department, dude, is actually really important because someone could give you a piece of information that will alter your business in the most positive impacted way it possibly could. Yeah. Where like it's going to literally help you explode, expand, and like, you know, if you're building something, like that's the dream. You know, you want to build something big as fast and as profitably as possible. You know, for us with the, you know, the mail stuff that we ran into, like we're not dumb. Like we knew it was going to slow down, but I'm like maybe 2035. You know, I'm not in any kind of a rush to make that adjustment. So we kind of like held on to what was working and what had helped us build quickly for a little bit too long. So that was like our biggest example of, hey, people started to change, and I'm like, dude, we can't change. This is working so well for us. Yeah. We definitely have time. Yeah. You know, and then the virtual train, I was really pushing against that because it was so hard for me to learn how to sell face to face. In my brain, I was like, I'm not doing that to myself again, where I literally have to reset and learn this entire thing twice. That was so crap. I'm not doing that twice. Instead of just going, I'm going to have to learn it eventually, because how am I going to compete with like You Direct or like a Bo and Sweeney, like, and you know, Josh and those guys that did it quickly? Like, dude, there's a reason that they moved the needle so fast, because they just said, hey, it's going to change. We're going to just lock it in and figure it out as a group. I don't know if I have a good answer for how do you make those decisions. Part of being in business is you just have to take a risk. Yeah. You know, and in April of 23, so just this last year, I had 1 month of like mail came in where I had some like handful of duplicates or whatever, same people. And I just said, dude, I cannot rationalize keeping to run this way when it's not scalable. Yeah. You know, so I dropped everything and I just fully went into virtual. And I had been cycling into virtual over time, just for the record. Like I'd been having my 2 days in the field and 2 days on the phone kind of a strategy until I was comfortable enough to go all in. And then I really didn't want to let go of my like local in-home stuff, because I was like, that's my guaranteed paychecks for me. I know if I go and sit in front of people, it's going to go well. So just making that decision and saying, I'm either going to sink or swim, and this is going to allow us to like start competing again. Like that was really scary and challenging. And I just kind of like buckled in, started reaching out to people that were selling virtually at a really high level, said, hey, what are you guys doing? What's your lead flow? How are you coaching new agents to do it? Like, tell me your strategy to get these guys up, running, and paid, because if you make a change and you don't adapt to those changes and like reach out for the help for the people that are already doing it, dude, you're going to drown.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, that I used to be very much like, you know, there's like people would go like, and this is how we were trained, to be fair, but like people would go like, hey, let's try this thing, and be like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, let's not try that. Let's just do what we're doing. It's already working, you know? And like, why don't you just do what's already working? And like, I think there's some of that works, right? Especially for like if people have no experience, but if you have people on your team, like there's people I could think of, like we got a guy who makes like veteran leads, right? And when he initially came to me with it, I was like, that's a dumb idea. Making leads can take a lot of time. And then I was thinking about it. I'm like, if you have time to figure it out. If it helps you, great. You know, and so I think it's just about being willing to test things out, give it a little bit of a runway, see if they work, and then if they don't work, shut it back down, you know? But yeah, it is hard. That's a hard part of business, and a lot of it is you're gonna have to guess, try stuff, and then give it enough time to work, and then if it doesn't work, shut it down, right? But that's like the scalability part we're talking about. We've never been a company that's focused heavily on like IUL sales, index universal life, you know, infinite banking, annuity sales, really. And the eye opener for me was I started thinking about all the other companies in our industry who only do that. And not only do they only do that, they only sell those products to friends and family. And I think like our tendency sometimes is we're like, oh, this is our thing. And then I started thinking about it more and more. I'm like, well, dude, they do a lot of volume considering they only call friends and family. So like, we don't have to do that model, but it must mean some of what they're doing is working, you know? And dude, a big shift for me was like, there's a lot of different models in business, and like, it's so easy to go like yours is the right one. And like, I really believe in our model, but there's things you can take from every model, I think. And I look at some of the other ones, I'm like, well, dude, they've been in business for a long time. Like some of what they're doing has to work. Like where's the good part that we can take and steal? And so for me, it's like looking at other companies that are doing things or innovating in certain ways and not going like, oh, that's all stupid. It's like something's working. Like which part of it can we take and use, you know?
Yeah. And part of that, dude, is just maybe unintentional, but like a little bit of ego, dude. We're the biggest in our space by a lot, dude. Like we're literally mathematically the best at what we do. So part of it could just be like, hey, I don't need to make any changes. You know, like, dude, I almost wrote 7 figures by myself in business. Like I don't need to change anything, just for the record. And then you're like, hey, I might, and this is what you did a good job of, is just letting me figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, this is kind of the direction that we're thinking about going. We're going to try this out. What do you think? I'm like, and you're like, let me know.
Yeah.
You know, and then you just kind of like let your people figure their stuff out, dude. And then, hey, to your point, Zach, I'm a little stuck, dude. And can you help us make this adjustment? Like, can you walk me through what you guys are doing here so that we can like implement and fix?
Yeah.
And so letting your people do that and not going, just because we do technically have the biggest company or like our agency grew a ton and like all of our guys were selling a ton, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be ready to adapt and make adjustments, especially when other companies are doing it at a really successful rate, even if it's not necessarily our, you know, bread and butter, if you will. But if it's working, they're profitable. People still work there and they're staying there for a reason. So like, to your point, dude, what can we borrow or permanently take and implement here? So now we've got everything.
Right. Yeah, and that's the hard part when you're a manager. Like you see people doing stuff, and you're like, "That I don't think that's gonna work." But like, if they ask for the help, like, "Is this a good idea?" You could tell them. Like I was talking with someone the other day. They were like, "Hey, I was trying to do a call center, like a LOA call center. Like we have one of those." And when we first talked, I was like, "We have one. Caveat is that there's 2 guys who put a bunch of money into it, and the only thing they do is manage this call center all day long. Each of them are there 40 hours a week. So there's 80 hours a week of management on this one thing for 30 agents, okay? And then the guy goes, okay, sounds good. And then he goes and tries it, calls me like yesterday and goes, hey, the call center thing, like, I think I'm just gonna go back to focusing on, you know, it's spreading me out too thin. And I've gotten better, but I'm not perfect. I'm like, if only someone had told you that wasn't gonna work. And then I was like, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Like I tried not to, I can't help myself. My filter is broken sometimes, but you know, when he started doing it though, if I had gone like, dude, don't do this, like he would have wanted to do it more and more and pushed harder. But I was like, let me know what I can do to help you with this. And then he came to it on his own. Right. And that's a hard thing to do as a manager or a leader. But this is like, if you have employees, it's different. It's like, no, you're not doing that. Like you're an employee, you don't have discretion to make that decision. But if you're independent contractors, like a volunteer army, right? So it's like, if they want to do something, you got to let them do it and then just be there to, you know, bounce advice off of and help people. But you can't tell people what to do or not do. And they're going to figure out their own way, you know?
Yeah. And then, dude, sometimes having those conversations, especially like we've got a good relationship. So you're like, hey, dude, if only, and that was not my specific example, but we've had other conversations where you're like, hey, it's weird if only someone would have said, hey, don't do that specific thing. And then you did it anyway because you're an idiot. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
I try to get better at not doing that I told you so thing. But to be fair, like the people like Andrew or Sean or the people who have told, or John, who have told me not to do stuff that I was going to do anyway because I'm hard-headed, Andrew was always like, oh, that was a dumb idea, wasn't it? I'm like, yes, I know you told me it was a dumb idea. I had to try it anyway. Before I had kids, like I always use the analogy of like your kid puts their hand on the hot stove. I'm like, I don't like that analogy anymore. That really scares me, you know? Like maybe let them fall down once, but I don't know about the hot stove analogy anymore. I used to use that one. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, no, that sounds scary. I don't want
her to do that.
I don't want her to touch the fucking hot stove. Like I know it's a bad idea. Maybe we could use a different analogy, but it makes sense. So, all right, dude, to wrap up, I think, you know, obviously you sell a ton, you built a big business. What are a few things you think just like general sales tip wise would help people close more? You know, whether it's tonality, assumption, the way you ask questions, like what are a couple things that once you implemented, you started selling, like you said, 7 figures a year?
Dude, I think the set structure. So I've always kind of had, once I, you know, figured out this specific type of sale, it was just introduction, why, structure, and close. And you know, the intro stuff with the virtual game is just like giving them valid credentials that this is what you're allowed to do. So like that's a non-negotiable for me, because I'm about to get all their personal info, social, bank, etc., like get to know their family situation and like walk through that with them. So I want them to know that I'm like licensed to do my job. And then understanding with really any purchasable thing, like why is it important to that person, and what's the value that they're going to get out of it, and what are they looking for, and then how do we tailor something to provide the value that they're already asking for, especially in our business. And then that structure piece, dude, that's what was really difficult, because if someone's like, hey, I need this for this reason, I'm like, cool. And then I just start like working and like going through stuff without telling them like, hey, here's what my job is, and here's the process that we're going to go through today. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? Yeah. And just telling them, this is my job. This is what I do. Here's what we're going to do today. This is how it works. Are you familiar with how this works? Have you done this before? Just making sure that like, hey, we're on the same page with, I'm going to go through this form, and then shop companies, pick one, you pick a rate, help you get an application in so you get the thumbs up from the insurance company. Cool. And then your close at that point is just show them something they can afford. Yeah. Like this, it's crazy what, with the structure of our commission, what you can get paid per hour by doing the job. So like, don't get greedy.
Yeah. To your point, like if you're working, you know, door-to-door sales, like you can't really do that, right? You can't really go like, oh, you need this, like this is what we're gonna do today. Like you have to do your pitch and go like, oh, hey, like I saw your neighbor, like do the BS, right? Like I saw your neighbor's house. I'm out here all week. Like, you know, you have to do your whole spiel that's corny and terrible. Like someone did at my house today. Hey, I'm helping. I'm like, dude, I know what you're doing. I'm in sales. Get off my porch. If I wanted you to come do pest control, I would have called you or sent in a lead. Go away. Actually, do you want to come sell insurance? Because we actually have leads. And he was like, oh, yeah, that sounds better. I'm like, good. But yeah, like if you have someone that actually filled out a form, like you said, they filled it out. Hey, you know, you fill it out for this reason. Cool. This is what we're going to do today. And people just want to be told what to do and make you feel like you're customizing for them, which is what I was told from you is, we're going to build this around what you're looking for, you know, and you're just letting them like, it's like they're going through Chipotle. You're like, oh, you know, white rice or, you know, brown rice. Mm-hmm. And you're just building exactly what they want. And then when you get to the end, the price doesn't really matter. Like they've already picked everything else that they want. And worst case scenario, you just lower it a little bit, right?
Yep. Yep. That's pretty much the, you know, kind of short version of what we do, dude. They literally ask for the help. And then we go, hey, this is what my job is. It's really easy. You know, here's kind of what we do, and here's kind of what we'll do today. And then, you know, just setting, at least they know like what the process is. That's what I got super lost on early. Yeah. And then, the price stuff, dude, just, I mean, we have a pretty fortunate gig here. Yeah. You know, so like our per hour stuff can be pretty wild sometimes. So why not just make sure that your business is highly persistent, sticky, and it's still serving, you know, what the family needs. Yeah. It makes our job pretty easy.
No doubt, dude. Well, hey, man, thanks for jumping on. This was fun. Appreciate everyone who watched this, and have a great rest of your day.